So what do we naturally try to do? We try to hide that. That's why we push through. But the more you push through, the worse it becomes. What happened on the night that we were delivering when all the systems were down? He collapsed, had to go to hospital. I find human beings, there's something in us, innate in us. We want to help.
Welcome to Homegrown CEO, the podcast for entrepreneurs, leaders, and business builders looking for real, actionable insights to grow their ventures and themselves. I'm your host, Matt Colborn, and today we're diving into a topic every leader faces sooner or later: how to manage stress and protect your own emotional well-being. I've always believed in finding balance, but like most business owners, I had to learn that the hard way. A few years ago, I hit a stretch where everything felt like too much. I was chasing growth, managing a team, juggling a young family, and pretty much running on fumes. What shifted things for me wasn't a big strategy reset. It's actually about learning to slow down, set some boundaries, and be more honest about what I needed. That's when I started leading better and living better. And that's why I'm excited for today's guest. We're joined by Wendy Alexander, former corporate high flyer turned founder of Happy Career Hub. Wendy's not just sharing theory, she's lived this, and now she helps professionals reclaim confidence and calm through mindset shifts, routines, and sustainable strategies. So whether you're in the thick of overwhelm or just need a reminder to pause and check in, this episode is packed with real tactics you can apply right away. So I feel like you'd have a bit of a checklist around what leaders should recognize in themselves to take a bit of a step back and evaluate workload and emotional well-being. What are some of those go-to areas?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is your level of stress. You will know when you're starting to be stressed, when you can't sleep at night, when your mind won't stop chattering, when you can't let go of the phone, the iPhone or whatever phone you have. Those are surefire signs that your job, your life is running you rather than you running it. And so sometimes I think people need to be responsible for their own time management. That's number one. And recognize when you not saying no to things that you should be saying no to. And your no becomes as important, if not more important than your yes. That's what I've discovered for me that works. What I'm saying no to has become more important than what I say yes to. And most of us, there's all the stuff that goes around that. The FOMO, like if it's some kind of project or some kind of great event or something, we're saying yes to everything because we don't want to miss out. But you need to ditch the FOMO and you need to go, is it powerful for me to say yes to this? Or is this one I can say no to without feeling guilt or anything around it?
When your no becomes more important than your yes, what advice do you have people in earlier stages of their career to the art of saying no without hurting their own career and progression inside the organization?
It becomes a negotiation. At the end of the day, everything comes down to that, right? And even in the early stages of career, you can negotiate for the kind of career that you want. So that means you need to be in constant communication with the leaders or the people who you report to. Find out what the priorities are, because some of them will tell you that the top 10 things on the list is the priority, but you need to go back and negotiate with them and go, listen, realistically, I can't deliver these top 10 things. What's your top 5 or your top 3, right? And then negotiate the times around the delivery of the others. Everything comes back to that. And you don't become powerful at negotiation unless you value yourself and you value your own well-being, right? And that needs to be put on the table because you need to say, listen, you're not going to get the best work out of me if you making me deliver these 10 top priorities when there's only so many hours in the week. So it's all about evidence-based, and also get really good at delivering the 2 or 3 things that you do have to deliver, because there again, you continue to build trust. I've seen that leaders will negotiate with anyone that they trust, that they can rely on. where the person has a level of self-awareness and a level of accountability. So you're not playing blame games, you're taking responsibility, not just for yourself and your well-being, but for the well-being of the team, the project, the company. And when you're able to speak in that language, that's where you get the support.
The speaking in the right language and tone and the communication, especially upwards, share with me some advice and experiences that you've had around managing those more complex conversations with people higher up in the organisation than yourself.
Well, one of the things I will say is always find out what the bottom line is going to be in terms of costs, because that is the language they understand. So if, for example, and I often use these examples because I've lived through it. So I worked once on a project where everyone was driving so hard, and what we didn't do was protect the engineer who had the most IP. So we were coming to the delivery implementation stage. So you're working through the night because you can only take the systems down on the weekend, right? So we take the systems down. Didn't observe this engineer and the hours he was putting in. What happened on the night that we were delivering when all the systems were down? He collapsed, had to go to hospital, right? It cost the company so much money because we had to then put all the systems back up and we had to choose another timeline date. And we had to extricate some of the knowledge out of this guy, visiting him in hospital, trying to get the knowledge. If you have an example like that, that is always been the example that I've used. I was saying to them, yeah, this is what's going to cost you. The bottom line is going to be this. If we haven't protected the team, if we haven't negotiated reasonable timelines with our clients, and if we haven't got contingency in place. And so sometimes when you trying to negotiate, you need to make sure you have that knowledge. It's really important. And it's not hard knowledge to gain. You can gain that knowledge from the experts on your project. You can gain that knowledge from other people, the other cross-functional teams that you're working with. And you can always negotiate something with your client. Because at the end of the day, the client is not going to want to pay another few $100,000 more because the project's been delayed because nobody negotiated the leeway and the timeline and things like that. And so conversations come back to always having a level of knowledge on impact. Most CEOs, most key decision makers understand money impact. And if you know the money impact, you're usually going to get them to listen.
So what you're saying is, Wendy, use data, not drama. Anchor your requests and updates in metrics, not emotion.
Absolutely. I love that data, not drama. I haven't heard that one before, but that's exactly what it is. So go and get the data. What is going to be the impact, both on the relationship with the client, the delivery, the team, the dollars, the timeline, and present it. So a lot of leaders understand PowerPoints. They like presentations in PowerPoint. Don't go and put it to them in a kind of format that they don't understand, right? Or that they don't like. So put it to them in a format that they understand, and then list the consequences of what could happen if you, your team, the project doesn't get the support that it actually needs at that time.
You touch on presenting to leaders. How can you help people, and what advice can you share around presenting decisions, not just problems, so that people aren't just asking for, what should we do, but how do people go into that meeting and actually share a recommendation?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. When you're negotiating, you're always offering something. So you need to come there with at least 2 or 3 options. And in the world of corporate speak, 3 options is great, because now you're going to give them, we could go this way, this is what's going to happen. We could go this way, and this is what, and a third way. And then let them make the decision. And there again, the data needs to be backing up the recommendation. So this is going to be the impact of solution number 1, solution number 2, solution number 3, on the timeline, on the dollars, on the people, right? And once you have that, then you go forward and you do your presentation pack with your 3 options. That's what worked for me in corporate, was always 3 options. And then they would debate between 2. They'd always disregard 1 immediately, right?
Yeah.
And then they debate 2, and then someone would make a decision, whether it was the sponsor, and it's usually the sponsor, the person who's going to give you the dollars, is the person that's ultimately going to decide. So get to know your sponsors very well before you even need them. Understand the language.
So taking that money-driven impact, what are some of the actual tactics and soft skills that someone can use to protect members of their team in times of great stress or project deliveries?
Well, what I've seen work is that when you're in the planning stages of anything, you're already planning your contingency. So you always have to plan that, because what happens is if it runs smoothly, you're going to deliver ahead of schedule. That's going to be a big tick for you and a lot of trust built in you. So you build your contingency out to make sure that there's enough fat in your timeline. You make sure that you've got approval for a contingency in terms of budget. We may blow the budget out by so much. If you deliver ahead of that budget, another tick for you. So this is all constantly about building levels of trust. And then it's up to you as a leader, if you're a leader of a team, to make sure the team is functioning well. And that's where you can do simple things like regular meetings with your team, regular coffees, uplifting, reward and recognition, all of this types of things. And then when you're negotiating with your stakeholders and your leaders, communication is the key. Most stakeholders don't bear any kind of grudge if you've been in constant communication. It's when you don't communicate with them and you bring a surprise to their door, they're not going to be happy, right? So communication, I think, is the key for any relationship. We all know that it's the key for our personal relationships, our familial relationships, and also our professional relationships. But what I see is, and this is also where I see some of the women struggling, they don't communicate. I was one of those. When I was struggling, I was not communicating. I was pushing through. Don't push through things that you're struggling with. Get better at communication and asking for that support. And communication is about expressing, this is what's going on with me. I'm feeling that this could impact us, our project, our team, and our company if it's not handled. And maybe give them options of how it could be handled.
Why do you think, Wendy, that people, leaders that have been great communicators historically, then during times of stress start to lose that ability to communicate effectively? And how do they recognize that starting to happen? And what are some things that they can put in place to get back their strong powers of communication that they once had?
Well, I think that when a lot of people become ineffective in their communication, it's usually because there's a level of stress that's happening, and what they've gone into is panic mode. Some of them have built a reputation of reliability, right? And then they start to doubt themselves. This was me. Brain fog is kicking my butt. I don't know what to do about it. I'm losing my words. I'm losing my train of thought, and I'm losing my confidence. So what do we naturally try to do? We try to hide that. That's why we push through. But the more you push through, the worse it becomes. That's what I noticed. And eventually you are going to get found out. Like for me, it was having to dash out of the meeting rooms all the time. And then I'm realizing these guys are now looking at me and going, what in the world is going on with her? So then you can't hide from it anymore. But you don't want to get to that point. Everybody knows when their confidence starts to wane. You feel it in your spirit. You feel it in the way you are. That's the time to go and say, you know what? This is what's going on for me. And it's actually eroding my confidence. One of the things I notice a lot of great leaders love is self-awareness. And self-awareness means they don't expect you to be perfect. They expect you to know when to ask for help, know when to give help, because sometimes your team is going to need some help, right? And it's one of the prized EQ skills. Self-awareness is one of the prized EQ skills from most decision makers. So when you show that level, when you can go to someone and say, you know what, I'm actually really struggling right now and I need some support. And these are the ways you could support me. Or you could even say to your boss, I actually don't know what support looks like. What do you think? How do you think I can get better or overcome this challenge that's going on in my life? My confidence is being eroded because X, Y, and Z is going on, you know?
I really like the way you frame that up, Wendy, about I need support. I don't know what support looks like, but this is what's going on with me.
Yeah.
How can you help me?
Yeah. Because I find human beings, there's something in us, innate in us. We want to help. And including our leaders, including our CEOs or our key decision makers. At the end of the day, look, you're always going to get one or two that are just awful people, right?
Mm,
But most of them want to help and they want their teams to succeed and they want their projects to succeed and they want their company to succeed. But they're never going to know if you're never going to ask or you're never going to
mm.
communicate authentically. So authenticity is really important.
I think it's one of the most powerful sentences in the human language is, "Can you please help me?"
Yes.
And very rarely when you genuinely ask that to someone, can you please help me? Inevitably, people will help you.
Yes,
People
they
will
will.
go out of their way to help you. We can't effectively lead if we're burnt out. So managing stress is really a key leadership skill and also one that we need to master at a personal level. When we're also responsible for managing a team, what are some of the smartest ways to share the load across your team without sacrificing quality or overburdening the people in your team that are there to support you as well?
Well, I think that comes to understanding the team and then being willing to delegate. And leaders, I was one of those leaders because of that perfectionist piece
Mm,
and that over productivity part of my personality, where there were times where I used to think I had to do it all. But what I saw over time was that that actually erodes trust between you and your team.
mm,
Because most, like everyone, like we said earlier, when you communicate authentically, people want to help. If you don't give them the opportunity to help, you literally sending a subliminal, maybe not even so subliminal message to them that you don't trust they can get the job done.
mm,
And so one of the key things, that I help leaders do is, when do you need to delegate and have you identified your people that can run pieces of the show for you and that can run it well?
When you're in that delegation moment, is it about delegating the outcome or delegating the task?
It can be a bit of both. But usually when you the leader of a program, you're responsible for the outcome and
Mm,
you're always going to be responsible for the outcome. So you need to choose your people wisely, who you end up delegating to, because ultimately any failure is going to fall on your shoulders,
mm,
right? And that's why you need to know who your 2IC or 3IC is, the person that you could, or the people that are just naturally talented in getting the best out of other people, right? And some of them, they live in pockets of your team,
mm,
depending on how big your team is. And those are the people you go to, people that are also outcomes driven, but that can take some of that off your shoulders, right? Because you can't do, like if you've got 10 priorities, like I said, you go to the CEO and say, what's my top five? Then the other five, you either say it's going to be delivered later or you're going to delegate it out to your next level of
mm.
leaders, right? But that's where knowing your team is really important and their skills and their talents.
Coming back to ourselves as leaders, what are some small, mighty, practical things that leaders can do each day to regulate their stress levels and ensure that they continue turning up for their team going forward?
Well, I would agree with you on the mindfulness piece, really becoming aware, having that quiet time where you're away from all the
Mm,
technology, all the gadgets, quiet spaces. And your quiet space could look differently to mine. Mine is
mm,
I sit down, I close my eyes, and I play waterfall music because I love waterfalls, right? So I
mm,
already figured out waterfalls. It just soothes me. I love them. I love them in real life. I chase them in real life. Everywhere I travel, I go find a waterfall. So I play waterfall music. For someone, it could just be a walk, taking a
mm,
walk with the dog. For someone, it could be finding a book and reading, 10 pages in the morning or 10 pages
mm,
at night or something, whatever that looks like for you, start to slowly incorporate it into your life.
mm,
Recognize stress signals. If you're not sleeping, that is not natural. We need to rest. The brain needs to rest, the body needs to rest. So if you're starting to not sleep, that's probably one of the first indicators. So now you need to figure out, how do I manage stress? Also understand that in some cases of stress, if there is mental or emotional issues going on, don't be too ashamed to go and get the help, the psychological help that you need. And a lot of people shy away from that. They don't ever want to admit that. But sometimes you do need to talk to someone who can give you independent, guided advice, an expert. Go and find the expert in wherever you feel you need support and go get the support, right? Practical things. And then schedule your times of rest and your times of quiet and your times of maybe meeting with a team that you've now delegated to, because you also still want to keep tracking certain things, right? You don't want the outcome to be bad at the end of the project and now you're accountable for it. So track it. Meet with the people that you've sought help from, that you've delegated the work to. Meet with them regularly and make sure it's still, you don't have to do that piece of work, because the whole point is to delegate and get it off your plate, but make sure it's tracking well.
I agree. So, Wendy, I think you've walked us through some really great pieces of advice around managing stress for leaders. I'd love for you to recap some of those again for our listeners.
Well, it comes down to recognizing that you're going through stress. That self-awareness piece is always really important. And once you recognize, and there's going to be certain physical signals, so go and get the support. Sometimes it's going to be professional help that you might need if that stress has been compounded over a long period of time and you don't know actually where to start. Other times it's a simple conversation with your boss, going. The other times it's a conversation with the team who's reporting to you and you delegating. You're going to go, you know what, I need support. I'm going to trust these 2 or 3 people, and this is the work I'm taking off my plate. And as I said, track it. Make sure you're tracking it. So have regular meetings with the people you've delegated to, just so you keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on. Because as I said, you don't want to add to your stress when it's delivery time and now there's a problem, right? And then for yourself personally, find your mindfulness spaces. Like everybody deserves that quiet time. In fact, I think it's imperative, especially in the digital age. We are hamstrung by our phones, and it has negative impacts in so many different areas. And so I say to people, do a detox half a day. I actually do that. Detox half a day. Sometimes it's half day on a Saturday, the first half of the day, or half a day. At times I've done a full day.
Really?
It's a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder, I will say. And one of the things I know where I can really detox from my phone is go to the footy. Yeah. I go watch the footy game. That's 4 hours of phone is nowhere near me.
I've got a friend who's run a very successful business who is able to travel without a phone and a laptop and completely disconnects. And in fact, so much so that he needed to make some messages for himself and then recorded a voice memo to himself on my phone in WhatsApp and sent it to himself as a message because he didn't have his phone with him. So it's an interesting trait. So first, delegate. Don't try to carry it all yourself. Spreading the workload across your team, it builds trust, it empowers others, and relieves the pressure on you as a leader. Secondly, communicate up. If you're struggling under the weight of expectations, talk to your manager or leadership. Set clear boundaries, share what's on your plate, and negotiate realistic outcomes. Most of the time, people genuinely do want to help you. They just need to know what's going on. And thirdly, make time for yourself.
Yep.
Stress management isn't just about coping after the fact.
Yeah.
It's about prevention. So build those small daily habits that support your well-being, whether it's a walk or journaling practice, as you said, or 10 minutes of stillness. You really just have to protect that time and you'll show up better for your team and yourself. One of the really interesting ones that I've found that has been helping me lately has been my 8-year-old daughter is a brilliant artist and she loves to paint, loves to draw, loves to colour. And we've got some very elaborate colouring in books where her and I will just sit next to each other and just colour quietly. There's no talk, there's no communication, but it's a shared experience. But the mindfulness and the resetting of it, of that time of colouring in with her has really managed to recharge a number of my batteries that were just getting too low.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've also, a friend gave me some adult coloring books last Christmas. And I agree with you. When I sit there and just color, everything feels still. So it's like I said, stillness can come in so many different ways for you. And for some people, it could be coloring. There's many of them. You can get scores of them on Amazon now. you know?
Wendy, you've given us a lot to think about, but before you go, we'd love to learn one final lesson from you, drawn from your own experiences. It's what we call your kitchen benchtop moment, a moment which really transformed your career or mindset.
Well, the thing I learned and that I've continued to implement was to take the next best action. And that's the advice I give everybody. What is the next best action you can take? Because nothing moves or shifts without you actually taking an action step. We can wish for no stress. We can wish for a new job. We can wish for higher pay. So whatever it is that you're chasing, whatever goal it is that you're after, identify what the next best action is. Because there may be 10 or 20 actions you need to take overall, but you don't want to overwhelm the brain with too many action steps. So you just need to focus on what is the next best one. Whatever that is, take the action.
Perfect. Thank you, Wendy Alexander, for joining us on the Homegrown CEO podcast.
Pleasure. It's been wonderful chatting with you, Matt.
Wendy's story is a powerful reminder that through all that life throws at us, we are responsible for our own well-being. It's actually up to us to carve out rest and restore that balance and to become better leaders for it. Thank you for joining us on the Homegrown CEO podcast. I hope what Wendy and I discussed has empowered you to take control of your own emotional well-being. And if you know someone else who's under a lot of stress and who might also benefit from today's lessons, send them a link and let them know you're thinking of them. Make sure you also subscribe to the show to hear when our next episode drops. In the meantime, I'm Matt Colborn, and take care of yourself this week.